Hello, good day, everyone. We're back again to another series of educational technology. The lesson today is a continuation of our last lesson that dealt with functions of educational technology. Because the functions of educational technology are many, divided it into several lessons, and this is one of them. And it's on the function of planning the learning environment. What is a learning environment? What is an environment first? An environment, the environment is anything outside of an individual or anything outside an organism. And as human beings, we are organisms. So it's anything outside of an individual that influences his behavior and situation. Anything outside of us that influences our behavior and situation. We are in Nigeria, River State. It's hot. Because it's hot, you're going to dress for the heat. You're not going to wear winter jackets in Port Harcourt. But if we're in somewhere like Siberia, the weather is cold. So we're not going to wear African prints and be walking about as if we're in Nigeria. So the environment influences our behavior and situation. Of course, the environment also influences whether we learn something or not, or whether we learn or not. So the learning environment is important. And what is the learning environment? It is anywhere teaching and learning takes place. Most of us in formal education know the learning environment as the classroom, but it doesn't have to be the classroom as we know it. It can be in a church, it can be in a parking space, it can be in a market, it can be in a hospital, it can be in a garage, it can be anywhere. As long as we're learning, as long as we're teaching and we're learning, we're in a learning environment. Before this time, what we knew as learning environment was restricted to the physical space. These days, our learning environments can even be the internet. But in this space, we're talking about what we traditionally know as the learning environment. And in educational technology, we plan two types of learning environment. We plan the physical learning environment, and then we plan the social learning environment. Planning the physical learning environment means creating a physically conducive learning space, somewhere our learners are comfortable physically, they can sit, it's not too hot, it's not too cold, and all that. Then the social learning environment deals with creating a good working relationship between the various elements of the instructional system. And what are the various elements of the instructional system? The learner, the teacher, the material, and the method. We're going to start with the physical learning environment. When we plan the physical learning environment, there are several things we emphasize. Space, that's the physical setting where learning is going to take place. Facilities, the necessary resources, visibility, ability to see in that learning environment. We have thermal control or thermal environment, controlling noise. We have acoustics. Thermal control has with controlling the temperature, sorry. We have acoustics, controlling noise. We have odor control, dealing with smells. And we have aesthetics. We plan for an environment that is pleasing to the learner? Does the learner find it pleasing? Does it meet its needs? So that's what we're going to be looking at. I will start with space. Space, we say, is a physical learning setting in which teaching and learning takes place. The physical setting in which teaching and learning takes place. How big or how small it is. And this is determined by various things. The number of learners will determine how much space we have. If we have 5 learners and we have 1,000 learners, you're not going to certainly give them the same amount of space. For the people with the class that is 5, we look for a small space. But for the class that is 1,000 or whatever large quantity, we look for an appropriately large space. We don't take 5 students and put them in an auditorium that will take 1,000 students. No, we're going to have noise because when we talk, sound echoes when there aren't enough people to fill the space. So for few learners, we look for a small classroom. For large learners, we look for large halls. The activities we do also determines the space. What activities are learners going to participate in? Those 5 learners, are they going to be playing football? Are they going to be doing gymnastics? If they're playing football, we can't keep them in a tiny class. We'll have to give them the appropriate space. If they're doing gymnastics, we have to give them appropriate space, irrespective of the number. So 2 things control our space: the number of people and the activities we carry out. Then we have facilities. Facilities are the necessary resources to carry out whatever functions we want to carry out in the school, whatever activities we want to carry out in the school system. So, has to do with the field, equipment, amenities, resources, services available to carry out specific purposes. If we want to learn to use the computer in the classroom as part of our classroom, what facilities do we have? Of course, we have physical computers. We can't be learning computers with only a chalkboard there telling us a computer is this and a computer is that. How do we learn to use the computer? We have to have computers to use to carry out the practical activities. If we want to learn how to play football, we're not going to learn how to play football in a computer room. We have to get onto a football field. If we're learning to ride the bicycle, we have to get bicycles and go to a space that allows us to use the bicycle. So the facilities are determined by the things we learn, and we must have the right facilities for every learning situation. Visibility is important in a learning environment. It is necessary for learners to see what is written on the board, what is happening in the classroom, the various colors, the pages of their books, what they read and write. And invisibility in the school system, as much as possible, we advise natural lighting. Natural lighting. When we don't have natural lighting, we have to be careful the type of lighting system we have. There are some situations where you have bulbs that in a chemistry lab you can't tell whether the smoke coming out is red, is blue, green, or white. But in some carrying out some chemistry practicals, students are told to look out for either white light or blue light or blue flame or green flame. If we have things like neon lights that do not differentiate between one type of flame or the other, how do we carry out our chemistry practicals effectively? We can't. Visibility refers to what we do on our chalkboards also. The chalkboard, what we write on it, our learners should be able to see. I go to a lot of schools for supervision of my teaching practice students, and I see them writing with the green pen on a whiteboard. Yes, we say we can use anything, but the green pen does not come out very nicely. And I tell them, step back and see whether your students see what is on the board or not. Please, we should be careful that our learners see what we write on the board because visibility is very important, especially with normal learners. We say what we see is better than what we only hear if somebody is a normal learner. We have the thermal environment. We have the thermal environment. We say the thermal environment is the process of managing and regulating the temperature of the learning environment to ensure that it does not deter students from coming to school or participating in class activities. We should control, manage the temperature, regulate it in a way that learners feel comfortable coming to school and to the classroom. If they come to school and the weather is too cold, like during the harmattan, so students will look for excuses not to come to school. But if they come to school and the weather is okay for them, then they come. Imagine if you have air conditioners in your house that cools the temperature in heat, in a 40-degree temperature heat. And then you have to go to school, and then in that 40-degree temperature heat, you don't even have adequate windows in your classroom. Not students will give all kinds of excuses not to come to school. So we control the temperature in a way that students are not deterred from coming to school. And how do we do that? It starts from the roofing, the building of the house. We use materials that do not make the place hot. In a tropical region like ours, we cannot use zinc to build the walls of a school. I have seen that several times in several places because we know that zinc ordinarily is hot. It makes the place hot. So we can't use zinc without padding and anything to make the walls of our classroom. If we do that, maybe we want to bake our students and ourselves. We can't do that. So it starts from the materials that are used to build the building. Then we come to the roof. We should not be using roofs that have dark color. When you have, like if you travel abroad outside Nigeria to temperate regions, they wear a lot of dark colors. And what that does is it helps to keep in the heat because it is cold. But if you go to hot regions, they wear a lot of bright colors because it what reflects the light of them, so they don't get as hot as that. That's why you come to a lot of African countries, our clothing is very colorful because we are adjusting to the environment. So the same applies to the school. For roofing, we use light colored roofing. That's why in our environment, you see a lot of houses, their roofs are not painted. They use the natural reflective colored roof and leave it that way. Or if we have to paint them, at least let us not make them black. Like this is, I see a lot of people using black roofing sheets. What they are doing is bringing in more heat into their houses. That's why if you look at a lot of those houses, they use a lot of air conditioners because of the roofing sheets they use. If we're doing roofs for schools, please let us use reflective light colored roofing. Then we cannot have a school with roofing, zinc, aluminium like we have it, and not have ceilings. We must have adequate ceiling that will help to shield the room from the heat of the sun. Yes, these days what happens in a lot of our public schools, the children throw things and destroy the ceiling, and the authorities don't bother putting it back. But that is wrong. We should educate our learners on the usefulness of the ceilings in their classrooms. We should have classrooms with large ventilated windows to let in air. and not just to let in air, to also circulate the air in the environment. Then another thing we can do is adjust our timetable to avoid the hottest periods of the day. If you ever travel to Italy, you discover that they have 3 hours of the day they put aside solely for siesta. Schools and shops, everything is closed at that time because that is the hottest period of the day. But you look at our Nigerian environment, we don't do that. At the hottest period of the day, 12 o'clock, we're in class, we're learning. And we wonder exactly what do we learn in that heat. So when you go, children are cranky, they are grumpy, they are not learning anything. It might just be the heat. So we can adjust the school timetable at the uh, hottest periods. We can adjust it by putting our lessons a bit early, like it's done in some northern boarding schools. They start a bit early, like 5, 6 in the morning. And then when it gets to the hottest period of the day from 10, 11, 12 to maybe 4, 5, they have a break and then they come back in the evening to learn. So if you go to some places and you don't see people in the classrooms, it's not because they don't want to learn. They are adjusting to the temperature. And that is what we can do, especially with boarding schools. And then we can also avoid, adjust the temperature by putting activities, certain activities at certain periods of the day. At certain periods of the day. Those activities that we do and are like fun activities like music, fine arts, physical activities that are fun activities, running around and all that, we can put them in the afternoon when the students are getting like dull, keep them active. But things like English, maths that are compulsory, and a lot of students, especially maths that they find difficult, we can put them early in the morning when the heat is down. And of course, other things we can do to control the heat is to provide fans and air conditioners. But remember, your fans and air conditioners, they just rotate the air that's in the environment. They take it down a degree or two, but not much else. Another thing we can do is to plant trees around our schools, around our classrooms, so that the trees and their leaves shield the classrooms from the heat of the sun. So provide trees, provide green areas that absorb the heat. In doing that, we are helping to control the climate. And that's what we talk about climate control. Climate control. The heat can be absorbed by the trees. But at times the problem might be cold. Most places is heat, but in Nigeria at times it can be cold as well during the harmattan. Or let's assume the students live in places like Jos, Mambila, up north, where it can really get cold at certain times of the year, November, December, January. Like places like Jos, when it gets extremely cold, can provide heating. That's why if you go around Jos, you see them selling a lot of coal on the road. That's what they do, provide heating. Like during the harmattans, rainy season, cold seasons, we can have windows that we can close slightly. And we can also start our classes a bit later in the day. See, during harmattan, the early morning is usually very cold. But as the day gets on, you see that it gets warmer and warmer. Then we have acoustic control. When we are dealing with acoustics, we are dealing with what? Noise. Noise control. And what is noise? What is noise? Noise is any loud, unpleasant, consistent sound. Noise is sound. There is good sound, there is bad sound. When it is bad sound, it is noise. Any loud, unpleasant, consistent sound or sound that comes up when it's not supposed to, it's noise. And noise in the school system is a very much underestimated factor. A lot of us, when we're planning the environment, we do not plan to control noise. But noise is a factor in the school system. And the purpose of acoustic control is to prevent noise outside the classroom from coming into the classroom, and to prevent noise from the classroom from getting disturbing other people in other classrooms. So we want to reduce noise, background noise, to the barest minimum, to the minimum, so that it does not affect learning. What are the sources of noise in the school environment? Other classes. We could have a school where there is welding going on in the metal workshop. We have the art studio. They are carving something. The music studio. They are playing music. They are learning to play the piano. The carpentry workshop, automobile workshop, or just other classrooms singing rhymes, poems, and all that. And then we could have markets around the school. We could have motor parks. We could have churches, event centers, busy roads around the school. They all generate noise that is not wanted in the school system. So, in carrying out acoustic control, it has to do with the placement of the school. The regulations for schools say we should not have schools around busy roads, churches, motor parks, and so on and so forth. But these days, the churches seem to grow towards the school. So it becomes a problem. So it's left for the authorities when permitting various things to look at all these factors. Then we have situations where we have, because of poor electricity situation, we have generators around the school. And generators can go on for long and become serious noise in the school system. Some schools have business centers attached to them, and then the generators are on throughout. A lot of our universities, public universities, have that all as well. You see business centers all around the lecture halls, and it's a big problem because you're trying to learn, and then there's a generator on. You can't tell them to stop. They have paid for the use of that space, so it becomes a factor. So, what do we do in acoustic control? We can physically separate the activities that go on in the school system if the noise is generated just in the school. Separate the physical activities from disturbing each other. So, we separate the library from the workshops, classrooms from like typing pool, the junior session from the senior session. In doing that, we put activities at different ends of the school. That's why when you go to our older primary schools, you see the junior session of the primary school, primary 1 to 3, at one end, and then you see the senior session at another end of the school. Sometimes they are separated by the school field. The purpose is to separate the activities of these two sessions of the school. You see, in the junior session, primary 1, 2, 3, and the nursery schools, they do a lot of singing, dancing, and all that. For the senior session, they are learning to read, learning to write, learning to communicate. So they need a little bit more concentration so that they don't get distracted. Imagine you have a senior session where they are trying to learn, do dictation, and then they are next to a class where the students are shouting, "Hey, hey, say!" The way children shout, you can't say A and they will say A. They will shout, "Hey!" And imagine 25 children in a class doing that. So we separate the activities of these groups physically. Then we also can separate the time activities go on so that they don't disturb each other. Like I said earlier, English and maths are compulsory subjects, and they are the subjects that stress a lot of students trying to read, trying to calculate. We can put these things at a particular time and put things like music, fine arts, carpentry, typing at another time of the day. So most times you go to the school system, you see English, maths, maybe integrated science, they are in the morning, first, second, third period, and then you see fine arts, music, carpentry, and so on and so forth toward after the break at the fifth, sixth, seventh, or eighth period. It's done on purpose to separate the time each of these activities come up. And what other things can we do to control noise? We rug, carpet our spaces, especially places like the library, resource rooms, so that when people are reading in the library, for instance, you don't hear footsteps. So we put rugs and carpets. Then in classrooms, we pad the legs of chairs and tables so that when we pull them or try to stand up or sit down, we don't scrape them on the ground for a noise to disturb everyone else. Then we have other control. Other control is the process of what? Preventing, capturing, destroying, and dispersing unpleasant smells. Smells in Various smells in the learning environment can affect learning. It can determine whether we learn or not. Imagine having a classroom positioned above a public gutter that is dirty. Where I have seen such a school, a private school that was built over a public gutter somewhere in my one GOB in Port Harcourt. And for the 20 minutes I was there, I could not breathe. And I was wondering how these children survive. I could not concentrate. And I was just there for 20 minutes. And they had to stay there all day to learn. Or imagine a situation where your classroom is outside a broken soccer way. So that we try to control, prevent such things in the school system. Sometimes that smell can even be a good smell, like food. But when the food is coming at the time you want to learn, it becomes unpleasant. Unpleasant doesn't necessarily mean that it smells bad. It can smell good and still be unpleasant. Like you're trying to read and then you keep smelling uh, Chicken Republic food around you. At that time you're trying to read. It's not pleasant to you because it's a distraction. So what kind of smells do we control in the learning environment? Or do we have the learning environment? Body odor can be a big problem. Food smells, garbage, human waste, septic tank smells, gutter smells, poultry smells, chemical industrial waste. If we've ever gone to the back of the refinery at Okrika, you will know what chemical stroke industrial waste smells like. It is not a pleasant thing for people and schools that are positioned around there. So it becomes a distraction. Some people will not want to go to school because of that smell. So we try to prevent and control all the smells. So how do we control smells in the environment? Education and awareness. We try to educate people around the environment, in the environment, how what they can do or how they can do it so that those smells don't come up. We look at regular cleaning of the environment, we do proper ventilation of our classrooms. Sometimes the classrooms might be moldy. Let have air in. We have green plants, trees, green areas. But one of the things in the classroom that can affect smells the most is body odor. And if we have proper education on what causes body odor, then we can prevent it. Some body odors are caused by medical situations. Medical situations. There are some diseases, ailments that generate body odor. We have stress. When people are stressed, sometimes they have body odor, still a medical condition. We have hormonal changes in puberty, especially in puberty and in pregnancy. That's why when you enter classrooms where there are teenagers, you smell a lot of body odor because puberty brings these changes. And if they don't control these changes very well, then the body odor will come. We have people with unshaven arms or unwashed arms, dirty clothes, especially under clothes. Some people change their clothes, but they wear the same bra from January to December. Some men, yes, they change their clothes, but they wear the same boxer for months or weeks. So you might look clean outwardly, but the smell is coming from inside. Then we have our diet. Our diet can cause body odor. I know a lot of us like fufu, and sometimes we like to eat the original traditional fufu, the one that, but some of them they smell so much, you eat it, and for 3 days your hand is still smelling. So imagine if you eat that traditional fufu one day and for 3 days it's still smelling. Imagine if you eat it every day. That means your hand is permanently smelling. Especially if you don't wash it properly with soap, that means you're always smelling. Your hand is always smelling. Imagine your mouth when you open it as well. Sorry for those of us that like fufu too much, but it's the truth. Then people that eat a lot of onion and garlic, you also have, and a lot of other foods have these things, spices we eat have these smells. So education can help us to control these things so that we don't offend ourselves and distract ourselves and others in the classroom situation. Then we talk of aesthetics. Aesthetics refer to how pleasing the environment is to the learner. How pleasing the environment is to the learner. In talking about it being pleasing, you are asking whether it's meeting the characteristics of the learners. Is the environment made to meet the characteristics of the learners? If we have uh, learners that use wheelchair in our learning environment, we should have situations where they have ramps they can use to climb up to the classrooms. But if we have only stairs that they can't climb, then the environment is not pleasing to them. It should meet the characteristics of the learners. It should be easy to use. Help us to achieve our instructional objectives. Our learning environment should help us to what? Meet our needs and interests. It should be things the learner likes because it's attractive to him. And aesthetics don't deal with only the classroom. It starts with the positioning of the school compound. We've already said earlier, I'm talking about acoustics, that we should have a classroom that is not placed near a school, sorry, a market, church, busy road, and all that. Because it can be pleasing if it's always disturbing us. The positioning of our buildings also matter. We shouldn't have a situation whereby the various buildings disturb each other. The library is near the workshop, and of course there will always be normally noise. Then it's no longer pleasing. The positioning of our classroom should be considered. We don't put classrooms in places where they can disturb each other. The sitting around arrangement in our classrooms also deals with aesthetics. How do we position the sitting arrangement? Are the learners seeing the board or whatever physical activities go on? What of the placement of the board? How is our chalkboard placed? Is it placed in a way that the glare from the sun disturbs it, or is it placed in a way that at all times of the day the learners see what goes on on the chalkboard? Then our instructional materials that we use, are they pleasing to our learners? Are they things that meet their characteristics, their needs? Are they colorful? Are they attractive? Are they good? All that has to do with aesthetics. Then we come to social learning environment. Now we dealt with the physical. What is the social learning environment? The social learning environment has to do with having a good working environment that meets the characteristics and abilities of the learners in the instructional process. The characteristics and abilities of all the various elements, especially the learner in the instructional process. And in doing that, we're talking about learner-learner relationship, learner-teacher relationship, learner method consideration, and learner media consideration. And what is learner-learner relationship? We say there should be homogeneity among learners In a learning environment, that means the learner should be similar. It should be of similar age, similar characteristics, similar abilities or disabilities. And the purpose of doing that is that they can learn from each other easily. And we can plan for these characteristics easily. If we are planning for learners that are blind, we plan for all learners to learn. But if we have some learners that are blind in a classroom and then we have some that are deaf, then it's not a good working relationship. Because for the deaf ones, we can't use audio. And for the blind ones, we can't use visuals. So it's a problem teaching such learners. What about age? If we have students that are similar in age, then the likelihood is that they have a particular mental ability. We have 2 year olds or 3 year olds. We know how we are going to teach them. But if we have 2 year olds and then we have 18 year olds in the same classroom carrying out the same activities, then it becomes a problem. So, learner learner relationships, similarities in characteristics, abilities, disabilities, and age is very important. Then we have working relationship between the learner and the teacher that we call learner teacher relationship. The teachers we use for a particular group of learners should meet their learning styles. We have various types of learning styles. We have the auditory learners, have the kinesthetic learners, we have the visual learners, and all that. We should use learners that are good in meeting the needs of these uh, various learners. If we have learners that are deaf, can we put a teacher that does know how to use sign language with these learners? No. If the teacher comes to the classroom and the learners are deaf and he is talking, he's wasting his time and theirs. But if we have a teacher that knows how to use the sign language, then it becomes effective. The learners we put should, the teachers we put should be those teachers that can meet the abilities of the learners they teach, their abilities or their disabilities. We have the teaching methods, learner method consideration. And what are teaching methods? We say there are patterns of interaction between the teacher and the learner, or between the learner and his learning environment. And generally, we have four of them. The lecture method, where the teacher is doing everything. The demonstration method, where the teacher uses the materials. The lecture method, the teacher is doing all the talking. Demonstration method, he's using the materials. In discussion method, the teacher, the learner, everyone is contributing verbally. And we have the activity method where everybody participates, touches, does everything that is there. So, what method do we use for a particular group of learners? With teaching children, we say we use a lot of activity method. So, we should use activity method for those that need activity methods. For adults, that are experiencing what we are talking about, we can use a lecture method. For instance, I'm teaching adults about orange in Nigeria. I don't have to bring orange to show to them because they know what orange is. So I can just talk about the orange. In doing that, I'm using the lecture method. But if I'm teaching 3 year olds orange, I have to bring the orange. I have to cut it. I have to let them see it. Because anything green, they might call apple or orange or tangerine, which of them they know. So I have to let them touch it, smell it, possibly taste it. So the method should meet the needs of the needs and characteristics of the students. Then we have the media. The media we use involves the instructional materials we use for teaching. Instructional materials we use for teaching. And what are those instructional materials? The things either they touch, see, feel, taste, and whatever. Just like the method, we have to take the learners into consideration, their characteristics, their age, their abilities, their disabilities. For learners that are visually impaired, we cannot use visuals for them, we use audio. For learners that are hearing impaired, that means they can't hear, we cannot use audio materials for them. We use visuals. Even for normal learners, certain learners have likeness for certain things. There are those learners that like reading. They learn by reading things or listening. There are those learners that we call kinesthetic learners that learn by touching. Those people will bring things for them to touch. So the media we use is determined by the type of learner we have. And finally, we have rules and regulations. There is no classroom without problems. But whether that classroom is effective or not is determined by how we manage the classroom. And one of the things we use to manage classrooms is rules. What are rules? They are principles and regulations that govern or control the actions and behavior of the persons that are expected to conform to them. So the principles or regulations that the students are supposed to abide by for that classroom to be peaceful, to be well managed, and what we call rules in this case. So, what are the characteristics of good rules? They should be very clear. Don't come late to school. That's a clear rule. Don't come late to school. That's a clear rule. Don't confuse the students. No, don't come late. Give them a clear rule. Give them what the punishment or consequence will be if they come late to school. If you come late to school, 20 minutes late, you'll be sent back home. That's a clear rule. If you come late to school with the wrong uniform, you'll be sent back home. If you come late to, so give them clear guidelines that they can follow. Don't give them confusing rules. Then we say our rules should be positive. Our rules should be positive. That means that instead of saying don't come late to school, say come early to school. Come to school at 7:30. Come to school in time. That's a positive rule. But most times in life, you see, most of our rules are negative. Most of our rules are negative. And that's why we always have the most negative students or students that flout all the rules, being the most popular students in school. Even the rules in the Bible, the laws in the Bible are negative. Thou shalt not, thou shalt not, thou shalt not. Instead of saying thou shalt not, we should say what we should do. So please let us put positive rules, positive laws, so that we are not looking out for people that flout these laws. Rather, we are looking out for people that keep these laws to reward. In putting rules, we should involve the learners, the students. When a school does not involve the learners in making these laws, the students go against the rules. Even if you have to direct what they want to do, convince them about the importance of these rules and have a student board, even in the classroom. Put rules with the students, not against them. Rules should be consistent. If we say time for school is 7:30 in the morning or 8:30, 8 o'clock in the morning, we shouldn't change it. For some people becomes 9 o'clock, we say it's okay, and some other ones they come at 8 o'clock, we punish them. No, it should be consistent. If it's 7:30 in the morning, it should be 7:30 for everybody, not 7:30 for some and 7:30 for others. If it's 7:30 for students, it should also be 7:30 for teachers. So rules should be consistent, not confusing, not wavering, not changing according to who is involved. So this is our lesson for planning the learning environment. Remember, if this is the first one you're seeing, there is the part one that deals with the other functions. Thank you very much. Remember to share, like, subscribe, and make comments, because if I don't know your comments, then I won't know how to improve these lessons. Thank you very much.